Hey, welcome back to Comp 225. And today we're going to be talking all about ethos, pathos, logos. You might have learned about this in your English classes, or if you haven't taken one yet, you're going to learn about ethos, pathos, logos. And these are great tools when it comes to persuading. And so, chapter 46 looks all at persuasive appeals and how we can really get our audience to do something, to believe in what we want them to believe in, and really get them like emotional about it and get them excited about it in a sense. Ready? So here's our objectives for this chapter. Just identifying, common persuasive strategies, explaining ethos, pathos, logos. That's the main reason for this all. And then thinking about how motivation is going to come into play with these three strategies. So I really, really love this sentence from our chapter. And it says here, persuasion is difficult because changing views often make people feel like they were either not informed or ill-informed, which means that they had to admit they were wrong about something. I want you to think about a time if you were ever wrong about something. How did that make you feel? Did it make you feel embarrassed? Did it make you feel just kind of bad about the information you had? Maybe you start questioning or doubting other information that you know. And so when we're persuading people, there's this certain art to it. And we have to think, how can I get you to maybe change your opinion without like ruining your reputation, without you feeling like your reputation is going to be ruined. And so it is kind of delicate, but I also do want to acknowledge this happens and it's okay if we're wrong. Sometimes the best way to do it is admit, hey, I was wrong. Now I know though, and that's okay. It's okay to admit that. But sometimes when we do have to admit it, we don't want to. And it's a struggle. And it's like, oh, okay then, right? So these are the three things we're going to focus on, ethos, pathos, logos. And let's talk about, ethos first. What's cool about this, just to give you a little rundown before I get into ethos, is that this is all from Aristotle. And so I want you to think back in the day, those Greek Empire days where they would hang out in those areas, the big courtyards with the big, columns. Those are actually called agoras. And what was neat about them was that people would go there and that they would go stand on a soapbox just to make themselves a little taller, and that they would just start talking about thoughts that they had. I think that's kind of interesting because thinking of like today's society, our social media, the news, newspapers, we get so hit hard with information all the time. And that it's like, how did this originate, right? Well, in these courtyards, that's how it originated. And so people would stand there, Aristotle would stand there and just kind of start talking about thoughts and talking about, his opinions on things where people were like, we can have opinions on things? Yeah. And so that's how these proofs, those logos was born. Ugh, sounds like a tongue twister. So let's get into ethos. Ethos is all about your credibility. I often ask a lot of times, like, why should I believe you on this topic? This topic that you've been working on for, 2 weeks. You've been researching, you've been thinking about it, watching videos. And it's like, you gotta tell me that so I believe you. When I go to the doctor, I want to be sure that my medical doctor has a degree, has been working for a while. And it's like, hey, I trust you. If I go to any random person, it's like, give me medical advice. And they're like, I'm not a doctor though. I mean, that's why we want the credibility. So what's interesting about ethos here is that we kind of get into these four different dimensions, specifically with ethos, of how to really establish that credibility as a speaker to an audience. And so first off, you've got to deliver competence. You've got to have competence in whatever it is you're focusing on. This is your expertise in relation to the topic. I love to share that I've been teaching specifically public speaking for over 8 years now. And so my competence is like, hey, I've read the textbooks, I've taught the classes, I've taught 2, 3, 4 classes a semester of public speaking. And so, yeah, you do kind of have to like show that off, but also in your competence. And this is a great example of like teaching? How well do I know the information? And I'm able to talk you through it, inform you through it, and then also answer your questions as well. Now, this also includes trustworthiness and how much you kind of perceive the speaker as being accurate and how they're using credible sources or credible information that's not in a manipulative way. You're building actual true trust with your audience members. I look a lot of this in political news and how sometimes, we hear messages and we think to ourselves, is this trustworthy? Or just because you're kind of coloring it the similar way doesn't mean that I should believe you or can I question it? And so that's why some people, we really believe what they're talking about because we have strong trustworthiness with them. Some people, we might not have that really strong foundation, so we don't trust what they say. And then if they have credible sources, it's just kind of hard for us to accept that. Now, also to be credible, you need to be dynamic in a way of thinking, how can you perceive me, audience member, as being outgoing, as being animated, and just being like excited to talk about whatever it is that I'm talking about, right? This goes into your credibility because it just shows that maybe you're a little bit excited to talk about whatever it is you're focusing on, and that you're willing to share this information. This last one here, charisma, this one's quite interesting because it is a mixture of abstract and also concrete qualities, thinking about how much the speaker is going to be perceived as attractive to their audience. And so this does really link into, your enthusiasm of a topic. It can think too about relevant content that you're using. If I'm talking to you about a topic and I have references from 1950, you might pause and think like, I don't know, that's really credible, right? And so then you're not going to like me as a presenter, and then you're not going to like my message, and you're not going to be persuaded, and everyone's time is wasted, right? Now, the interesting thing here about charisma is that some people are just born with it. They're the ones who are able to go in front of an audience, catch everyone's attention, and everyone's listening to them. You can work towards gaining charisma. This class can definitely help you, and definitely more classes as you present in person and continually virtually. But thinking how you can intentionally develop charisma, it's going to take some skill, it's going to take some effort, but you can do that, which will help with your credibility. Now, with logos, this one focuses on logic, it focuses on reasoning. I look at this one, I think research, right? It's all about presenting your credible information as support material. It's support material because you have your words, you have your own argument, and I'm going to pull from all this different research to help support whatever it is I'm saying. Now, verbally citing your sources during the speech, this is a perfect way to have logos kind of shine. Perfect way to help with your credibility as well. But also it's easy for us to understand and to hear if you have it on a PowerPoint or anything like that, just for us to see it. This is interesting here, especially with a persuasive speech. When you're kind of giving your argument and you're focusing on logos in this moment, you want to think, hey, I got to present both sides. So let's say my argument is that paper straws are bad. And so I think, okay, well, what are the both sides of an argument here? Paper straws are bad for the environment. Paper straws are good for the environment. I gotta talk about both of these sides. I gotta give them both attention here, including some references. Then I gotta think, hey, what's my opposing side? I need to focus on why, that's a bad one. And then why my other side is the good one, in a sense. It takes a lot to kind of focus on both sides of your argument. But we have to understand and realize, hey, I need to inform you about this so that I can persuade you on why one is better than the other. And with the logic of an argument, it's nice to recognize that there's two different sides to it. Here's the last one that I want to talk to you about now, and it's pathos. Emotional appeals. A little side note, I've always hated that ethos was credibility because it starts with E. And it's like, well, that one sounds like emotions, right? But no, pathos, this one's the emotional one. And so you want to sit emotions in an audience to get them involved. giving the audience emotions so they can sit there and think like, how am I supposed to feel right now? What emotions are you trying to stir up in me? And so involvement is definitely going to create more opportunity for persuasion and action because let's say it really hit the audience on a pretty persuasive argument, why you should wear a seatbelt when driving, right? Share a story about a loved one that got in a car accident and maybe they passed away. That's going to hit the audience members' emotional appeals of like, what if that was me? What if I had a loved one that passed away like that? You're going to feel all those emotions just kind of sitting in with you. And so, with this involvement, it's going to help me persuade you to believe me and to do whatever it is I want you to do it. It's definitely effective when you're trying to influence a behavior. So, let's say wearing a seatbelt, you're going to wear a seatbelt now because you're going to believe my speech. You're going to be persuaded by my speech. And then you're going to feel like I need to do this. This is my involvement of it. Then it's effective, right? Now, this one can be difficult because you got to really hone in on your delivery skills. You have to be able to know how to deliver your own emotional side of things without letting it overcome you. Because sometimes as speakers, we might become overcome by emotions. So it's like, can I talk about the serious stuff, still delivering it widely to everybody? And then also, how can I use my words powerfully and dramatically? Really get my message across. People hear me, they understand me, and they're moved by my message. They're moved both physically to do whatever it is I want them to do, but they're also moved emotionally. So I want to end today's lecture with a thought about your persuasive speech. So how can you use ethos, pathos, logos in your persuasive speeches? How can you first involve, credibility, building that credibility of why I should believe you? That's why it's so important in your introduction to establish that credibility and show off and celebrate. Hey, I read a bunch of articles, I've watched some videos, I'm passionate about this topic. You got to show that off so that me as the watcher and all of your other audience members, we can think like, hey, this person has some heart into this, and so I want to believe them. You can also think, how can I persuade them with emotion? Choosing topics that maybe will get us all involved, choosing topics that we can all relate to some sense. And then, of course, with logic, references here is perfect. Make sure that you have good, credible references and try to think, hey, how can I hit my audience with statistics, interesting statistics, and just keep that going and building that argument so it's stronger and stronger. I do, though, really want you to pause when you finally choose your topic. Think, what kind of ethos, pathos, logos, proofs can I use here to just help me with my message? Alrighty, that's the end of chapter 46. I'm excited to see where we continue these conversations. I'm here to help you if you have any questions or concerns. I'll see you in the next one. I'll see you later. Bye.